Good morning, Year 8. So last lesson we had a look at District 6 and an apartheid. So you'll do now today is just to check that you can remember what both those things entailed. So what did you learn about District 6 last lesson, and what do you now understand an apartheid to mean? Give yourself 5 minutes to have a go at these questions, and then we're going to move on. So obviously last lesson we didn't actually get round to reading the poem, but obviously there's a reason for why I've spoken to you about District 6 and the apartheid. So I'd like you to read through the poem Nothing's Changed, please. And as you're reading through it, all I want you to be thinking about is, what do you think is happening in this poem? So what do you think this poem is supposed to be showing? Give yourself a good 10 minutes to read through it properly and write a response to that question for me. Okay, so I hope you've had a good think about what you think the poem is about. I'm going to tell you now what it's actually written about, okay? So this poem was written in 1990 after the period of the apartheid. So this is not actually written when District 6 was, bulldozed down. It's not actually written during the times of segregation. It's written after that. And the poet is discussing the fact that even though the apartheid is supposedly over, he still feels it around him. So even though we've supposedly got rid of racism, we've got rid of segregation, he thinks it is still quite a big issue. And he's done that through highlighting the fact that for many blacks, a life of hardship is still the norm. So the whites are privileged and dine in the fine restaurant, which is the imagery that he creates, okay? Whilst the black people obviously are not allowed into the posh restaurant and have to go down the road to the dirty, scruffy cafe and take their food away or sit at the plastic tables. So he's saying that even though we've apparently moved away from the apartheid, he still thinks it's very prominent in a modern society, even without the rules and regulations being there, that it's had kind of a lasting effect. So now I want you to have a think about how this poem should be read, okay? And there's two choices. So the first one is, do you think he's saying it angrily to show the poet's attitude towards the fact that nothing has changed? Do you think he's angry about that? And if you do, I'd like you to pick out some quotation to support that. Or do you think it's in a resigned way, as if he knows that it's too much to hope that things can change? So is there a sense of sadness about this rather than anger? And again, can you find a short quotation from the text to support that view? This should take you, again, about 10 minutes, because if you're rereading through the poem, thinking about which perspective you're going to go for, then obviously it'll take you a bit of time to do that. So there's another clip for today's lesson, and again it'll be attached as a link onto Show My Homework, so you can access it there. So what I want you to do is then watch this clip after thinking about my previous question to you. So do you think the poem should be read in an angry tone, or in kind of a tone where he thinks that maybe things are, just too difficult to change? And this is actually the poet speaking about why he wrote the poem and his intentions behind it. So what I want you to think about is, does he clearly seem to be angry about it, or does he seem to go the other way? And see if you can develop your previous ideas to the questions. Okay, so this is all some of the things that the poet has said during that video that we've just watched. So what I want you to think about is, I want you to think about, what do you think he's suggesting in this paragraph here? So what do you think he's trying to say about why he wrote the poem and what he's hoping to happen from it? And then also, can you try and work out the meanings of these three words here? So democracy, constitution, and redolent, okay? And again, 10 minutes on this task, and that is going to take us up to the end of the lesson. There are answers on the next slide, so make sure that once you've had a go at this task, you move on so that you can mark them. Okay then, so hopefully you've had a think about your own opinion on this. Obviously this is just mine, it's not entirely true, it's just what I think, okay? However, the meanings of the words are definitely factual. So I've said that the poet seems to be saying that even though District 6 is no longer a place, he still feels its presence and is saddened when he thinks of the losses that happened there. He also states that even though the country may have made new rules and regulations against racism, that it's still very much an issue. And he also goes on to say that he thinks there is hope of things changing, but he doesn't see that happening in his lifetime. So he thinks racism will remain an issue for the remainder of his life. And then I asked you to think about these words. So democracy is governments that represent all parts of society. So everyone is supposed to have a voice within society. Constitution is a set of laws or rules. And redolent is reminiscent, so thinking back to the past, okay? Which all kind of feeds into what I've said previously, doesn't it, about the fact they can set as many new rules and regulations as they want. Actually, he feels as though District 6 and Africa as a whole has been seriously impacted by the apartheid, and he thinks it's going to take a while for them to get over it. So I hope you've enjoyed this poem. It is quite a thinker in the fact that it does ask you to kind of, consider certain things that you maybe haven't thought about previously and how hard life has been for some people. So make sure that you've made lots of notes from today's lesson and that you answer the Show My Homework quiz at the end. Thank you.